The fact is, we rejected the left in '72, we rejected the left in '80, we rejected the left in '84, we rejected the left in '95, and we rejected the left in the last election in '10. But the left survives. You know, it just keeps trundling forward. It's a little bit like the conversation we had today about Culver. I mean, you know, he gets beaten, so now he wants to appoint the judges to replace the judges who got beaten, so he could impose precisely the values people just beat. Well, it takes a much more fundamental change. And I think we're at the end of the 80-year cycle of the New Deal. I think the country's ready to recognize that many of these institutions don't work anymore, and that we have to have a fundamental rethinking of where we are, and that requires a much broader and bigger coalition than the traditional Republican Party.
You had some things to say about the judicial retention election before it occurred, and then I heard you on Mr. Michelson's show this morning, and you were articulating an idea about perhaps not funding the courts or abolishing the Ninth Circuit.
I think the legislative, and if you read the Federalist Papers, the legislative and executive branches who are elected ultimately are expected to win over the judicial branch. I mean, that's exactly what Hamilton and Madison wrote. And they said the judicial branch will be very timid because in the end, in a straight-up fight, it can't win. And I just think for the since 1958, we've allowed this whole model of judicial supremacy to run amok so that lawyers rig the game in favor of lawyers. And you have a very elitist view in which they impose on the rest of us things that are absurd. An example I used, which is not Iowa, it's the national judiciary. You have federal judges today who are pretending that they're the commander-in-chief, making decisions about national security with zero comprehension of the consequences. And we shouldn't tolerate it. We should tell them, if you want we don't have to impeach them, that's a long, lengthy trial. Just if you want your court abolished, we'll abolish it. We have the absolute precedent of Jefferson, 1802. There's no question that Jefferson and Madison understood the Constitution. And their precedent was to eliminate 18 out of 35 federal judges, over half. I'm only suggesting one demonstration effect, the Ninth Circuit.
What about Iowa?
What about Iowa?
What would you do in regards to the 4 justices who remain on the court?
Ask them to step down as a matter of honor. I mean, it's clear if they had been on the ballot, they'd have been repealed. And it seems to me this is pure Thomas Jefferson. If the integrity and authority of the system comes from the consent of the governed, which is the Declaration of Independence, then the governed have indicated that they don't agree with this court. And I don't think anybody in the state believes the other 4 justices would have survived. So I think if they have any sense of integrity about protecting the courts, they'll step down. And if the Bar Association has any sense of integrity, they will deliberately not pick radical judges and will not make recommendations to the new governor. And if Culver has any sense of integrity, he will not appoint anyone. I mean, for a defeated governor to try to replace defeated judges by repudiating the values of the people of Iowa strikes me as the absolute opposite of a free society.
Sir, could we get your reaction to these past midterm elections, how it kind of compares to the 1994 takeover, and what does this mean for the next 2 years for America?
Well, I think the results were deeper and bigger than 1994. We had 682 legislative seats changed to Republican this time. I think we were at about 400 in 94. Over 60 congressional seats this time. We were at 52 or 53. In fact, this is the largest House change since 1932. Governorships are amazing. If you look at the map today, since Obama became president, from New Jersey to Pennsylvania to Ohio to Michigan to Wisconsin to Iowa, that's pretty remarkable. And I think it partly depends on what the president decides to do. It's clear the American people want more economic growth, more jobs, more take-home pay, lower taxes, and less government in Washington. I mean, it's very hard to interpret the elections any other way. And the question will be whether or not the president wants to listen to the American people or whether he wants to continue to try to impose radical values on a country which is rejecting them. And if he does the latter, there'll be deadlock. If he does the former, I think they can get some things done. I think Speaker Boehner will be deeply inclined to try to get something done.
Good time for a few more. when you're talking to folks on these speaking tours, sorry, I don't speak very well right now, but so I should have my question short.
2 weeks ago, I thought I was going to lose my voice. I know what that feeling is. Like.
As you're going to all these book tours, what do you need to hear from Iowans to let you know that they don't just think you're a good writer, they think you would be a good president?
Well, I think the real question is, could we build a movement of replacement big enough that it would be able to affect deep into the elected system, not just the presidency? There are 513,000 elected officials in the United States. And if you really want to fundamentally make this country competitive and healthy and capable of creating a better future, you're talking about a wave of change much deeper than just the presidency. And I'm frankly trying to sort out whether or not that's doable and whether or not I'm the right person to try to do it. And being out here is a part of it. I'll be with the Republican governors in San Diego on Thursday, and I'll keep talking to people. Clifton and I'll make a decision probably in February or March.
Today we had the political director of the National Republican Party criticize Chairman Steele. What are your thoughts on that following the results that we had on Tuesday?
The political director of where?
The RNC, Gentry Collins. He resigned today. Very critical of Chairman Steele. Collins is from Iowa. Well, what's your, I mean, you've held high-ranking office and had lots of subordinates. What's your feeling about that kind of thing coming off of huge victories 2 weeks ago?
Well, I think it's unfortunate. I mean, I have no idea what was going on behind the scenes, and I think there's an old rule, generally speaking, that if you're that unhappy, you ought to leave, and if you stayed, how come you're that unhappy? I mean, but I think that's something you'd have to ask Mr. Collins.
Okay.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.